you. Thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight. We are excited. We've been kind of chatting about this all week, and we are really glad that Chris from Sonic Systems is here to join us today to talk about all things smart home technology. So as Alex and I are showing homes, we're seeing more and more technology being built into the homes. And our buyers are always curious about what it is, what they should look for when they are looking for smart home features in a new house that they're shopping for. Also, sellers are wondering, what should they do to maybe upgrade or make their home more appealing with smart home technology? And what homeowners overall in general can do to increase the value of their home with smart home technology. So we're really excited to go into the world of smart home features. Just some housekeeping before we get started. In case people are not familiar with Zoom, at the bottom of your screen, there is a chat feature or a Q&A feature. Both of those will be monitored by Kelsey. Behind the scenes, who's running things behind the scenes. So if you have any questions, please feel free to enter them either in the Q&A or the chat. We will try to address all the questions. We've had some questions emailed in advance as well that we're going to go through. And for those of you who are not joining live, who are watching the replay of this, then please reach out to us. I will put in all of our contact details at the end for either me, myself, or Alex, my business partner, who unfortunately was called away tonight, or Chris directly. And we'd be happy to answer the questions for you. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Chris, who's the owner of Sonic Systems. It's a premium home automation service provider with locations across Canada, like West Coast and Vancouver and in Ontario. And I will let Chris take it away. Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Elaine. Happy to be here with you guys as well. What I thought we could do is just start with we've got this little animation sort of advertisement that we made for when we do a trade show, just to give people a quick, idea of what it means to have a smart home without getting, into a bunch of technical stuff. And then I have a PowerPoint slide so that I can show you guys that'll break it down a little bit more, and then we can talk, in more detail afterwards and get through questions and anything like that.
Okay, great.
So let me just share the screen here. All right, you guys can see that there?
Yeah.
Okay. So, my company is Sonic Systems. We started in 2009 when my twins were born, which was actually recently after the last time. 2008 was a hard year for a lot of people. And that's when I decided to start this business. And I've worked in technology before. I sold consumer electronics. I sold appliances and furniture. So I was familiar with a lot of this stuff and had done complicated jobs, but no company really at the time was, focused on smart homes. There might be a TV store, they might sell security systems, they might sell vacuums, but nobody was sort of doing a complete turnkey smart home. And that's what we wanted to do. Was out of the gate, our focus was smart homes. Of course, we do technology for businesses, but we specifically focused on residential markets, especially, builder markets and stuff like that. With Toronto, over the last, 10 plus years, there's been a lot of construction around, like knocking down older homes and building newer homes in, up and coming areas. And I think that's a trend that's going to continue. I mean, I don't know how the real estate side of things has been going lately, but I'm sure people's needs are probably changing. So the technology that we've been putting in, it does make, enhances life, makes things easier, safer. There's a lot of, benefits to it. But in terms of resale, we have some, data based on habits of people and resale. to show that it definitely does add value. I mean, like anything you put into your home, it's not like you're going to get penny for penny back. But I can say that a home that is modern, smart home versus a house that isn't is not going to get the same, the other house is not going to get the same money, and or it may just take longer to sell, because if another house has all of these things, people are more inclined to want that.
Right.
um,
I read a stat, and it was in 2016. So you know that technology has come a long way since 2016. But in 2016, 81% of buyers would be more interested in purchasing a home with smart home technologies already built in
yeah, yeah, it's
than.
a bit of an undertaking for sure, but yeah, I mean, people definitely like to get a home that's at least has options, even if it's, because budgets obviously vary, and it's not that you have to spend 50 or $100,000 for this, but you can do things in such a way where it leaves it more open for growth. Some of these things are limiting from the beginning. So one thing that I definitely recommend is having a plan, even if somebody's doing this themselves, like a do it yourself type person. Instead of just buying random things and hoping it's going to do what you want to kind of plan out your eventual system and buy things according to that, because a lot of people who tinker with this kind of stuff, they end up buying stuff over and over again because one thing doesn't work with the other or whatever. So having a plan, it's just like when you're going to build your house, you're planning in advance as to what you want to see in it. So it's the same thing with this, even if it's being retrofitted. So just talk a little bit about what is a smart home here. Um, so this covers a lot of different, basically any kind of technology that we interact with in the home. Uh, it constitutes a part of a smart home. So that includes everything from security, video surveillance, video intercoms, lighting control, climate control, uh, automated window coverings, access control. So this is things like, controllable locks or fob systems. Can also include motorized doors. We have audio and video systems, of course, and then a lot of other things are being built into fridges and well, almost anything you can think of. So the idea of having a smart home, though, would mean to kind of make things simple, not complicated. And then depending on how you go about it, you may end up with the sort of equivalent of what a home theater system would have. You might have like 6 or 7 remote controls to control your whole AV system. People buy like a universal remote in order to make that easier. And depending on the way you do your smart home, you're either going to end up with like 5 to 10 different apps, or you can have one that does everything, brings it together. And so that's part of what we do is consolidate all of this stuff. Some of it is automated so that there's not a whole lot the user has to do to get the use of the technology. But it's just everything works together, and there's a lot more you can do with it when it's centrally managed. So we talked a little about this before this started, talking about what is a smart gadget versus what is an integrated system. So a smart gadget it can do a lot of cool things, and it's usually controlled by an app on your phone. And examples of this would be like a Nest thermostat or a Ring door station. These gadgets do not control third-party devices. They only work as on their own or as part of an ecosystem like a Google or Amazon smart system. These large companies control the environment and functionality. And I've even heard stories where older devices no longer are supported. So basically, you have to buy a new one. It's like a phone. Your phone gets too old, you have to change it because it's just not part of the network anymore. So I have seen that with certain things, like a thermostat losing its functionality because people didn't want to upgrade it or whatever. And then, yeah, most importantly, all of these kinds of things, they require an internet connection for full functionality. When it comes to things like video cameras, that's not great because, I mean, essentially, if you lose internet or power, you have nothing. A proper security system is going to be battery backed up with a local recorder, so that you can, not lose any of that, footage in case of an emergency. But They can be useful in a lot of applications. So I'm not saying, don't buy these things. There is a lot of good applications for it, but you have to, buy it knowing that there's certain, vulnerabilities that it has. So, I mean, like Amazon would like people to allow their drivers to open their door and put stuff in it, meaning Amazon could open your front door. I'm not sure I want that.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
but there's, that's why I say you want to kind of like design a system to do what you want it to. And there's a lot of ways to achieve that. It doesn't have to be crazy expensive. It just needs to be thought out. So most of what we do is we would call it an integrated system. And so these systems are connected to a central processor that's located somewhere in the house. They're also known as hubs or a smart hub. Internet is only needed for these in order to interact with it remotely. So if I'm not at home and I want to control my home, it obviously needs an internet connection. If I want to stream my media content, it needs internet. But outside of that, it doesn't. So, I mean, it's much more secure because not all, like you don't have all these individual devices that are, connected to some cloud server on Amazon or on Google, sorry, or on Google. It's, where do we go here? Oh, sorry, getting myself lost. Yeah, it basically, the internet's only there for outside control. It's not required to function. Everything that the system can do, it can do with or without the internet there, which is also good for remote properties where people maybe don't have stable internet. So yeah, it's a lot more secure because of that. And we can use normal network security. Like we don't have to worry about somebody hacking Amazon to be able to control people's, house or whatever, because it's fully closed off. Like the only way you can access it is through a secure login. So it's a much more robust system in that sense and a lot more secure. And the other side of this is that it's from the beginning of what smart homes are. One of the companies that we sell is called Crestron, and they pretty much invented what smart homes are. And they've been doing this for, I think, 40 years or so now. So they were really like the pioneers in all of this. And so in that sense, there's really nothing on the planet that's able to be controlled that the Crestron system cannot control. Something like an Alexa home system or a Google, environment, those devices that it works with have to be designed to work with that Google, and that's it. There's not like a way to take an old piece of equipment and make it be controlled by Google. Whereas with our system, I can control a VCR or a laser disc if somebody has it still. Like
now you're really like you're dating yourself.
Yeah.
You're dating yourself. If you know what a laser disc is.
Definitely do. Yeah. I was around for that battle. Actually, there was another format that died out along the way, was HD DVD. So at least this time they made a decision instead of like beta where it hung around for a long time.
All
But
right.
and the other aspect of this too, you're going with the sort of smart gadget approach. You're getting an app designed by that company to do what they want it to do, which in a lot of cases, it may have some really cool features. And sometimes we take ideas that we see in these apps and try to implement it for ourselves. But the key difference is that we can design our own interface. So it's kind of like we can make our own website, but it's a control platform, that we can use on tablets, on phones, on wall-mounted touchscreens, and have consistency across them all, so that it looks, it's basically the same interface, just shaped and properly sized for each device that it's being shown on. So we can do basically anything. If a person can imagine it and there's something out there, we can piece it together to make it do whatever they want. So there's a lot of, interesting things that can come from that. This is a couple of basic pieces of a system here. So a control processor is just like basically a computer that runs all the equipment in the house. User interfaces would mean things like remote controls, your phone, an iPad, a wall-mounted screen or a lighting control keypad. Um, we usually use equipment racks in a basement or some other room where everything is housed. Um, Alarm systems would also be a part of that. So if you, for security, and then camera recorders, like I was saying, versus a Ring or other type of Wi-Fi camera, these are hardwired to a local recorder with a hard drive, and they can do cloud backup if you want. But the point being is that it doesn't need to be connected to the internet. You know, if the internet goes down, you still have it recording. And if you put a battery backup on it, then it's going to have a period of usability while there's no power until the battery runs out. So it's a lot more reliable in that sense. And I've had clients who hide the recorders because sometimes thieves will try to take that out. So we may have even a decoy sometimes, like where people think it's this one, but the real one's hidden.
Wow. Okay.
So it's just better. I mean, if person security is really top concern for them. The other ones are good though. Like I've used a lot of the Ring product. I was initially a little bit, skeptical of these Wi-Fi cameras, but there's been a lot of houses that I've retrofitted, especially in Toronto. There's a lot of like really nice brick homes that have, heritage trim and stuff like that. And you don't really want to go around chopping it up, especially if they're not necessarily living there forever. So these definitely are good for that. And they do have some cool features like being able to activate a siren or turn on a motion activated light, speak through the camera. So if you see somebody at your, back on your backyard, you can tell them to go away. So these are pretty neat. And I do think they have, I've even put them in houses that have a proper video recorder system. They just bought a couple of these because of their convenience and what they can do. So it definitely has good uses. It's just that if you're relying on it for security and in a scenario where it not working at times is not acceptable, then that's not the way you would want to go. And then basically what we were was talking about before with an equipment room is we call it a head end, and it's just, instead of the way people used to do things where you would have a stereo system in every room of the house, or you have let's say your multi-room speakers are running from a kitchen or a family room cabinet. You have a home theater in the basement with more equipment. So now what we've been trying to do for the last many years is consolidate everything into one room. So it makes the house like a lot more, like you don't have to have cabinetry everywhere. A lot of people like to go with a clean look where it's just speakers and a TV on the wall, or maybe the speakers are invisible, maybe the TV's behind a painting, but we don't want to see the equipment. The equipment's not why people, they don't buy it to look at it, they want to use it. So we like to keep all the equipment in one place, and having it in a rack means that it's more reliable, because if you've got everything in a cabinet and somebody's cleaning out the inside of the cabinet, or they're putting DVDs or whatever away, a lot of things can get knocked out or unplugged, or you move it because you want to dust beside it or something like that. But in a rack, everything is like secured in place. We can do all the cabling very clean on the back, and it's just a lot easier to fix if something goes wrong. So it's just I guess a more professional way of doing it. And when people are investing money into these larger systems, it's definitely something that you want to put like, I guess, have some standards to making it work best as it can. This is
We normally see all the equipment in somebody's laundry room in the basement, or like
yeah.
and whatnot. So yeah, like, in our clients always ask like, "What's this?" And I always have to try to explain like it's like a central operating component for like everything that's built in upstairs. So yeah.
Yeah, and the bigger the house and the more that it's got in it, the more equipment you need. This double rack here is for a very big house with lots of TVs and speaker zones. So this is much more above average than what you'd usually see. But these things can come, half size of these too. So, or even wall mounted ones, depending on what the situation is. So it's all scalable to whatever the job needs. So these are some user interfaces. So here's like a tabletop touch panel. This is showing a mobile devices like your iPad and your phone. This one here is a fixed wall panel. And then we have remote controls. This is a voice interface. I think this is the Google one. And so we can use the Google Voice or the Amazon one as an interface to the system. So you can basically say, turn on family room lights, and the lights will turn on. You can ask it to play a certain song, and it'll play that song. You can tell the blinds to go up halfway, and it'll do that. We have a little demonstration of this on our main webpage. There's a link from a guy who has a Technologgy channel on YouTube. So you're welcome to check that out if you like. These ones down here are lighting keypads. And the difference between what we would do here versus what you might go and buy from Home Depot. Home Depot ones do not become like keypads like this. They basically are just like, they look like a regular light switch, but now you can control it with your phone. These, on the other hand, can do a whole lot more functionality. For example, we can program it to control the blinds that are in that room. So we don't have to have a separate controller on the wall for the blinds. It can just be 2 buttons at the bottom. We can also do scene control from here. So what that means is that instead of having 1 button for every single light fixture in that room, you can just have a few moods basically, or let's say areas. So I can turn on the kitchen with 1 button, and it'll go on to the way that I like it to be every day. You can have a different setting at night versus the day as well. So if you and the user can adjust all of that stuff on their own, but it basically simplifies everything, because you're not, oh, which light was it? Because some houses have like 6 or 8 light switches for the kitchen, so it's a little silly.
Yeah, and I have to turn them all on when I go for a showing. It's like you're turning everything on, and you don't know which one goes to what. Nothing's ever labeled. So yeah, this is.
Yeah, and you can see. Oops, I don't know if I can make this any bigger, but no, I guess that doesn't work. We can engrave them, with room names or whatever function we want it to do. Another useful thing here is when you're, let's say, going to bed, you can have a good night button in your bedroom, which, for example, could turn off all the other lights in the house, including your kids, if they're not supposed to be up still. I even programmed my kids' rooms, because they would always, I'd turn everything off, go to my room, and then I go over to the bathroom or something, and I can hear them making all kinds of noise, and the lights are on full. So I made it so that after a certain time of day, their lights will not go past 15%. So like, they have no way of making them brighter basically at night. So or you can do it by floor. So again, if I walk from my basement to the main floor and I go, oh, I don't need any lights on down there, I can hit 1 button that says basement, the whole floor is shut off. Same thing if I want to leave the house. I can have an away button, and that away action could be a number of things. It could be that it's going to arm your alarm system, set your thermostat to away, close all the blinds, arm the security, and lock the door lock, all from just sitting away. We can do the same thing when it comes to alarms. So let's say for your a wake up alarm, you want your blinds to open, music to come on, and even if you want it to happen slowly, we can have the lights, ramp up over a period of 10 minutes or longer. We can have the music start out low and get higher. So it's not like a jolt awake. Many things like that you can think of can be made into kind of like an activity, you could say. Don't really need to get into this much. I did this for a school presentation at one point, but basically, as I was earlier saying, we build our software basically like you would a website. So there's the visual aspect of it, which is like when I click on buttons and whatnot. And then there's the code, and that's sort of like the programming language that we would use to make everything do what it needs to do. So this is, like I said, it's like building a website. So we really can customize things quite a bit for people. I described these a little bit, but scenes were basically, when it comes to lighting controls, or even a scene could be like, a romance mode. So you could have dinner, if you're gonna have someone for dinner and you want the lights to dim and music to come on, like that could be an activity or a scene. timers as well. So of course, all your outdoor lighting can be set to turn on and off with the changing sunrise and sunset times because it has an internal database for that. Voice commands we mentioned, and then again, one of the differences, if we just go back to this slide that showed the controls, so a lot of these things, like basically you have one, let's say a Nest thermostat has an app, and that's really it. I mean, yes, you can control it from the thermostat, but you can't really do much else with it. Like you can't tie the activity of dimming your light to the thermostat. They may work on this going forward, but you know, right now, all these for what ours are very basic features. When you don't have, you know, let's say you don't have all the stuff that matches with Google, or maybe they never came up with that part yet. Like you're not getting kind of like the you know, capability of having one thing trigger another thing or what have you. So you know, that's again one of the pluses is that, like, if I have guests over, you know, like let's say my grandparents were visiting, they're not going to take a remote control and play with the blinds, you know. But the button on the wall is pretty simple. Well, up, down, you know. The same thing with, like I was saying, automating functions. So this really does make it a lot more accessible to everybody, and with a properly designed, you know, system, you don't really need to teach people very much. Like we try to make it as straightforward as we can, you know, so that someone can just start using it without, you know, a whole lot of learning up front.
Yeah, that was one of the questions that we received in advance, that, you know, someone who's not very comfortable with technology, but understands the convenience, especially it was relating to like a senior's home, and
Yeah.
they wanted to install something for their elderly parents so that they could operate some of these things without having to search for a remote, or, you know, get to the panel on the wall, like
Yeah.
voice activated things where
Yeah.
things can turn on. So, you know, what you're saying is that you can set all of these things up in advance, or, you know, support them on the way, even though people may not be technologically savvy, correct?
Yeah. With if I go to one of my, let's say, early clients from when I started my own company, you know, so let's say 2009, 2010. Not that we didn't have phones and whatnot, but nobody was controlling stuff with your phone or iPad. That wasn't the thing. One of the first companies was Crestron that offered it. So we could basically take any existing house. We would have to update just the processor depending on how old the house is, but that's it. Like everything else they spend on all the thermostats, the shade controls, the lighting, everything that's there can be completely controlled through the app. So I can, you know, it's a very future-proof system in that there's like all the endpoints, like all the devices throughout the house are never going to be, you know, unusable basically, unless things really advance to a point where, like for example, on a touch screen, the older touch screens, they didn't have swiping functionality. It was more of a tap. But obviously, as we got used to using smartphones, scrolling and swiping and all this was something that we all became used to. So at one point we had to update ours because it was more of like a, you know, tap 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 like this instead of sliding, and we'd see people trying to slide the thing up and down, and we're like, yeah, no, it doesn't work like that. But obviously now they've modernized those things. So but it doesn't mean I can't use the other one. You know, I think if the guy doesn't want to spend money on replacing that now, he doesn't have to. It still can be used. It's just that, you know, some of the newer ones may have added features. Point being though is that it's not like a reinvestment of everything. You're not having to completely replace the whole system just because you want some of these newer technologies, including voice control. So it's pretty, you know, limitless in that sense.
Yeah, because, you know, I think the common misconception is that, you know, some of these smart home features are becoming more popular because millennials are the ones that are buying most of the homes. They're the ones that are comfortable with technology. But I find that a lot of the inquiries are actually from our older client
Yeah,
database, and,
yeah,
you know, they're looking to also automate some things because it may not be as easy for them to raise up and down the blinds all the time, or, you know, like I said, you know, for them to have to look for like their remote all the time is not always convenient. So I can see how this would benefit even the older generations. So.
Most of our clients are actually not any millennials. Like I would say our general age range for clients is 30 and up, with like majority of them, I would say, being kind of like 40 to 60 range.
Okay.
A lot of, professionals or, I guess people who have some money to be able to want to invest in this kind of stuff. So that's a lot of our clients now. When all this sort of stuff started coming out, and I saw that Google is doing, smart homes, and Amazon's doing smart homes, I was a little bit concerned. Being that I sell high-end systems, I was a little worried that this would take away from our business. But if anything, I'd say it's the opposite, because people are, interested in all this stuff. Some people are buying these things. Maybe they buy a Nest thermostat, maybe they buy a doorbell, maybe they buy a few things and kind of make it do a couple of cool things, but then they get hooked on it. So then the next opportunity they have, maybe they're buying a new house or building a new house or whatever, they want to kind of go more, full board onto doing something like this. So, and of course you need, I guess, the financial resources to spend, like on a house like that, I guess. So it all comes down to an individual's budget, when it comes to what you can do. But what we try to do is provide, a path for people, so that if your budget isn't, huge to begin with, you can at least, move in the direction you want to eventually. So I was just,
While we're on the topic of budget, I'm just kind of curious. So, for example, if somebody's home security system, right? So you said there's ability to record the video, right? And you can also have it upload to a cloud. So I imagine there's a cost for that cloud
the
storage.
cloud function there would be, yeah. But another common thing, like all of these web camera systems, you got to pay a monthly fee for recording it at all. So it's not like you basically, you buy a Ring camera, and if you don't pay the fee, it only works when someone presses the button. You can't see what happened before. If you miss them, you're not going to be able to watch it.
Right.
With what we have, like, that's not a thing. Like you said, you're only paying for cloud storage if you want that. You don't have to do that. It's just an option.
Do you also have to pay for alarm monitoring, like a traditional ADT system would require you to?
Yeah, that would be the one area that really hasn't. I've seen a couple things out there, but by and large, the alarm industry, you need to have a connection to some kind of monitoring network. So we've dropped landlines for a long time now. Like, we just simply don't use landlines on alarms at all. We use a cellular device, which is like specific to alarms. So it's not like it works in the same exact way as our cell phones, but they have their own network for this, which I guess is obviously a lot more secure as well. But it's a wireless communication, and so because of that, you have to pay to be at least connected to it. Um, Even if you don't want the police to come, or any security guard to show up, or anyone to call you, you still have to pay some money in order to be connected on that network, in order to have some of its remote capabilities. On the other hand, when we do these automated systems like this, we could make our app do essentially everything the alarm providers would do without a monthly fee. It's just that I wouldn't necessarily go so far as to like 100% rely on it. When people hear a notification on their phone, they don't necessarily react to it. Whereas, like, if you're getting hammered with phone calls from a monitoring station, you're more likely to take a look. So it's not that we couldn't do it, and we have for some people, because that was fine for them, but it's just like, something to consider. And in most cases, you're actually going to save money on your insurance if you have a monitored system. So it may not actually, I don't know what the actual savings are, but I do know that they do give a discount if you provide a letter of like a certificate that is monitored.
Right.
So it may work itself out. And they have at least recently put out some new plans that are a little more bare bones, because I guess they realize that some people would not want to necessarily pay for full monitoring services, but they still want the connectivity. So they're trying to offer like cheaper plans so that people can get that functionality out of it at least.
Yeah, and I know that we talked before, prior to this session, about your work in cottage country, and I
Yeah,
could see how definitely that would be very beneficial. Like it's not a property that you're at all the time. It's
yeah.
sometimes remote, not a lot of traffic. So if there is something happening there, then this would be a great way to kind of keep an eye on things while you're at home, right? So.
Actually, that's another thing. If I go step away from like the restaurant system that I was mentioning that we sell, there are a few other variations of this, sort of an in between from the, let's say, the Google to the full blown system. An example of that would be a Honeywell Lyric system, which is a relatively new line of alarm products that Honeywell released, and it's very more modern. Like instead of an old like numeric keypad, old looking numeric keypad, it has like a nice touch screen on it. It has a built-in camera, so every time somebody uses the keypad on it, it takes a picture of who that is, so you can see it. It can be integrated with Z-Wave devices, which is a wireless mesh network technology. And there's a lot of things that are Z-Wave based. So as long as it is Z-Wave, then Honeywell can control it in some way. So that can be a light switch. It can be a thing that controls a faucet. It could be a window shade. There's a lot of things that you can do on Z-Wave. And so it's kind of like a less expensive way to go. It's a lot of it is wireless, meaning like a contact for a window or a motion sensor is just battery powered. They don't need a lot of energy, so they last quite a few years. But this is like an option that we use for retrofitting, and it has some pretty decent capabilities when it comes to controlling other devices. So and it's cost effective. So
Mhm.
I've been using that one a lot more lately because it's a pretty good solution when you're not wanting to go super high end and spend tens of thousands of dollars. This is like a much less expensive way to go.
Now you've mentioned retrofitting a couple of times, and we have a question here regarding, the like how easy it would be to implement some of these things in an existing home. Obviously, when you're building a home, it's you have access to everything being open and all the wires and everything can go in before drywall. But how easy is it to retrofit somebody's house with some of these options?
Depends on the category, but there is like a growing amount of pretty decent solutions. And really, there's a solution for almost anything, but the way to look at it is that it's just more limited. It's kind of like I'm a vegetarian, so when I go to restaurants, they have food with no meat in it, but my options are a lot more limited. You know what I mean? So when it comes to wireless, it's just kind of the same. You can't expect everything to be the same either, but there really is quite a lot. So it's not like it's a bad thing. It just means that you're gonna have to go like a certain route. And based on what I was talking about earlier with this like sort of self-contained like closed system versus one that relies on all these outside server connections, you can still do a system like that in a retrofit scenario if you plan it properly. The main thing there being like a hub or some kind of main system that manages the devices there. If you can kind of build it along those lines, then it's a lot more secure and it isn't as reliant on it having internet to do basic things. So I would say that right now is like the best time you could be retrofitting something like that. But let's say another example would be like cameras. So we were talking about wireless cameras, like the Ring ones, which I can install one of those in half an hour because I could just replace a light fixture with one of their cameras that has the floodlights on it, and that's it. Like it's connected to the electrical that was for the light, and then it has Wi-Fi. So it's really an easy thing to set up, and most people can do it themselves. But as I was saying, that's like a Wi-Fi based device that needs the internet. So if you wanted to have like a better camera system, you have to wire them. There's not really any way around that. So we definitely can retrofit wiring in any house. It's just a matter of like how complex of a job is it going to be? Is there going to be a lot of damage?
Right.
Sometimes we can do things in a way that is either no damage or minimal, depending on the house or and what we need to do. But companies like us who are doing custom installation have definitely done lots of retrofits. So just a question of how far does the person want to go. It's a
Right.
good time, like if you're renovating your house to do this. So we've definitely been part of many renovations. So, once that's happening, then it is a good time to, cut up some walls and run some cables. So wherever you can, it's better. But outside of that, really, there's even audio. Like there's ways to wirelessly transmit your sound around a house, or done through network connections. So we can do a pretty decent sound system, distributed sound system. Um, Really, almost anything. Window shades can be wireless. Lights can be wireless, and those things are depending on the brand, they're not going to necessarily lose any feature. So it's just a matter of I guess, again, like designing it for what they want.
So in this new world of ours, this COVID world of ours, obviously we've become very aware of all of the things that we touch,
Yeah,
and when we're out in public, and more and more businesses are going to call for doors that automatically open. All bathrooms, like in all public bathrooms, in terms of like the faucets starting by
yeah.
motion sensor and whatnot. Are you seeing some of that filter into the residential side of things?
Definitely. And what's interesting is over the last few years, we started to do more and more commercial projects like churches and boardrooms and factories. And so we started doing things that, even though I've been doing smart homes, we didn't do a whole lot of stuff when it comes to like automatic door openers and accessible pedal buttons for wheelchair users and stuff. But it has become more common for businesses, and we have been doing that for a few years now. But I think we're going to see a lot more of it, of course. And I also think that it's going to filter down into the homes quite a bit. And so I actually looked into some of this new technology. And one of the things that I mean, people ask me a lot about what might be coming or what new technology is there. But really what we're seeing is a lot of merging of existing technologies, or using things that we already developed in different ways. And the more demand there is for these types of things, the cheaper it will get, because they'll find, more efficient ways of building these things to meet a higher demand. So some examples of that. Um, so here we have, of course, like you said, the touchless faucets. So a friend of mine who's a builder, him and a group of people just recently started a business retrofitting bathrooms, like the commercial and residential, because some of the residential contacts they have wanted this for their houses. So um, this obviously is, I don't have to explain an automatic tap,
Yeah.
but over here, this was interesting. This is a door handle that, if you can see, it glows blue most of the time. So this is using UV light. UV light is 99.9% effective in killing bacteria, including coronavirus. So
Wow.
this door handle essentially is constantly sanitizing itself, because it's always emitting UV light until until you open it. There we go. Until you open it, like when it's open, the contact is broken and the light switches off. But otherwise, when it's in the closed position, it's all the germs on it are being killed. So I think that's pretty cool. And using UV light in door frames has been a thing as well for like hospitals in certain countries. There's a lot of research that still needs to happen when it comes to how UV light affects skin, because it's bad for skin. You don't really want to be in UV light, but I guess they're working on ways of making this safer, so that people could literally just walk through it, and the light bath will sanitize them in some way. But you can use this, like I was saying, with the door handle, or here's a phone case which has a UV light in it, so it sanitizes the phone in like 10 minutes. And considering, or I think there are commercial ones that do it much faster. So like, we wash our hands, but we don't all wash our phones. I've been using like Lysol wipes on my phone every few hours when I'm out, and I can hardly find any Lysol wipes nowadays.
Yes.
So this thing was pretty cool. And this one, like, this company has a lot of different versions of this sort of thing. And this one here was meant for Apple. It has a place to charge your headphones, and those get sanitized. It has a place to charge your Apple Watch, that also gets sanitized. And the whole thing acts as a charger. So it's a wireless charger for all these things. and it's a portable battery too. So it has like a battery built into it. So I mean, this thing is awesome as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
I think we all need that, you know. Um, and then talking about intercoms, so like a lot of people may have had a door intercom in the old days where you would ring your house phone and then you would turn your TV to a certain channel to see the picture out of the front door. Nobody really has house phones anymore, and their TVs kind of don't work the same way. You know, it's all, and neither do cameras nowadays. Cameras are digital, like there's no video connection to come out of it. So it's like this has kind of been a bit of an interesting area to watch, because this Ring doorbell, for example, was the first thing I ever saw that was app based and essentially called a cell phone. Not all the other companies that were selling intercoms, that was not possible. And I can also say that a lot of these intercoms were like $1,500 to $3,000, whereas this thing when it came out was like $199, and it did like everything better. And I was like, aside from it being kind of flaky because their first round of it was relatively inexpensively made, they got better with it. But it's still, like as I said, a Wi-Fi device, so it's got its things. But you know, it revolutionized how we deal with people at our front door. And there's now a lot of other, you know, competing products. But this guy, you know, he built this in his garage. He had like 20 people working for him at the beginning, and I met them I met them at a trade show once. Maybe they were a year in business, and then you know the guy was able to sell his company to Amazon for like $6 billion after only 9 years in business or something like that. So that's pretty amazing, and they've been taking this and built and you know integrating it with some of their other existing stuff like the Alexa platform. So here we have like I think this is an Amazon, or they call this thing. It's a, forget the name of it, but it's like an Amazon TV screen type thing, like an 8-inch screen, and it has the built-in Alexa, so you can it is an Alexa like everything that can do, but it can also do video calls either between these types of devices. So if there's other ones in the house, or if you're you know, like in this case grandma has one, you can do a video call between just this. Or if someone rings your front doorbell, you'll get a chime on here and you can answer to see the video or to talk to them. So this is a good way, because I actually have had you know, family that wants to have some kind of modern camera system, but they don't have a smartphone and they don't plan on getting one. So what do you do for that, right? This is a simple, easy way for people to be, let's say, join the modern world, because, you know, like my grandma is quite good with her computer, but she's not set up to do video calls or anything. I tried to, like, you know, say, hey, I'm like, can my kids talk to you or whatever? But she doesn't have a way to set that up. And she's also, you know, of course, at the beginning, nobody could go visit her to do it for her either. So this is cool because it's simple and you don't have to learn much to be able to use it. So I think that's something that we're going to see an increase of. And I just have a picture of a webcam here, which is something that people would put in a boardroom, but obviously people are buying these for their homes now too. And I think we're going to see a lot of things revolving around, you know, more home-based working. An idea that I have for my business, for example, would be to create a virtual space. So let's say I took my house, for example, that has all the gadgets in it, and we do kind of like a virtual capture of it, because there are companies that can come in and do that, and then make it interactive somehow, so that people could basically walk around this house and use everything, so they have an idea of what it does.
Oh,
So
wow.
I think that that's where I'd like to see things go, because obviously physically seeing a showroom, it's not necessary really. I mean, people buy things off the internet as it is, so we're gonna probably start moving in that direction, I would say.
Okay, Chris, this is amazing. And I honestly, I feel like I could talk to you for another hour, but we only have time for one more question. And it is about a seller. Like, if someone sells their home, how easy is it? Like, do they just leave it all for the buyer, or how easy is it for them to
It depends.
transport their
Yeah,
system for the new house?
I've had it both ways. It depends on the individual. I would say that mostly people do leave it with the house, especially if they're trying to sell it as a smart home.
Right.
But I've seen every variation. So I've seen it where people leave everything, including the TVs. I've seen it where they leave everything, but they take their TVs. I've seen it where they take their TVs, they take the equipment rack, they take almost anything they can that's not physically attached to the building.
Okay.
So it depends on the individual, I would say. But we can, like, if someone invested a lot of money and they don't want it to, and let's say the buyer was being thrifty and didn't care and was trying to cut the price down. Well, if it were me, I'd probably want it all out too. So
Right. Yeah, no,
it
I see that.
depends on what you want.
Okay, amazing. So, is there anything else that you want to tell us before we wrap up?
um I don't know. I mean, like I'm was happy to do this with you guys today. I think it's a good way to get information out. And if anybody has questions, I'm certainly available to answer them. You can send us emails, or the phone number that's listed there is also able to receive text messages. So people can contact us however they like. Or if you guys get questions inbound to you guys, then you can just
Mhm.
send them over to me too.
Yeah, because not everyone's going to be watching live, and
Yeah.
for anyone who's watching this on a replay, please reach out to either Chris directly. I've just put all of our contact details in the chat again for myself, my business partner Alex, who couldn't join at the last minute, and also for Chris. So if anyone has any questions, please reach out to us. We will do our best to answer them or get you, the details that you're looking for. And yeah, I really appreciate this, Chris. I'm going to be very informative to everyone who's attending live and also anyone who's on the replay. So, uh,
Sounds good.
yeah, thank you so much. And thank
Yeah.
you everyone for joining us today.
Yeah. Have a good night.